Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto became a powerful shinobi and got a harem with Ino, Haku, and Yakumo? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment. Now, let's start. Chapter 1. After about 8 years of the constant crap, sometimes it being literal crap, he got thrown at him, he had two options. Try and seek the approval of those that would rather see him dead in a ditch or say it all. Seeing as at this current moment he was being chased by the ever stereotypical mob, there were even pitchforks and torches. He found himself leaning towards the latter option. Who might this person be? Well, our main character, of course. Is there like an angry mob store where they get a group discount or something? 'Cause this shit is just ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the pariah of Konohagakure no Sato. Most would be wondering why an 8-year-old kid would be running away from a mob of angry villagers out for blood at such a young age, and the answer is actually quite simple: Kyuubi. By the age of 8, young Naruto was much more mature and jaded than any child or person should be. But when about 89% of your own home village wants to have your carcass mounted on their wall, it kind of becomes your only option. Having lived on the streets after getting kicked out of the orphanage at the age of 4 and doing these fox hunts on a near monthly basis, Naruto knew damn near every nook and cranny of the village. Using said knowledge of his home village, Naruto knew the best place to lose the mob. Even if there were any ninja mixed among the crowd, he doubted they were of enough skill level to be any better than the villagers, otherwise he would have already been caught. Even still, as a precaution, he had picked out a route and a hiding spot that would lose even a seasoned chunin. Noticing that the beginning of his escape route was coming up, he ducked under a thrown rock and made a sharp left into an alleyway. Racing to the far end of the alley, he found the small hole in the chain-link fence that would allow his small body to squeeze through to the other side. Not leaving anything up to chance, the young blonde continued running as fast as his little legs could carry him to his next obstacle. Making another quick left and using the momentum he had built up, he threw himself onto his chest and slid through a small window into an abandoned warehouse. Naruto felt the sting on his chest, notifying him that he had scraped himself up pretty badly with that last maneuver he had pulled, but the alternative of letting them catch him was far worse. Quickly looking for the ladder that would lead him to the roof of the building, he spotted it in a dimly lit corner and made a mad dash for it. Climbing it as fast as he could with his lung burning and his body aching all over, he finally pulled himself up onto a catwalk of sorts. Continuing on with his survival-inspired obstacle course, he ran to the end of the rusty and rickety catwalk and, finding the loose window pane, opened it and was welcomed back out into the moonlit world once more. A quick sprint later and he was opening and closing the door of a stairwell leading down to the building across from the warehouse he was just in. Considering this was the slums of Konoha, he highly doubted any of the members of the mob would still be following him at this point, so he jogged down the stairs, still being as quiet as possible just in case. Murphy's Law seemed to dictate his every move after all. Finally reaching the bottom of the staircase and consequently the end of his life or death Olympic sprint, Naruto could do nothing but collapse onto the cold concrete floor. Laying on his back, the only sounds that could be heard were those of the rats scurrying to and fro and Naruto's own ragged breathing. Even with his own Uzumaki enhanced stamina and Kyuubi adding to that, running for your life for the better part of a half hour would leave most anybody tired. I'd give you a 10 for execution, but your showmanship could use some touch-ups. Considering your age though, I am still rather impressed. Echoed a deep yet smooth and even-toned voice from somewhere in the building. As soon as our little blonde protagonist had heard the beginning of the words, he had instantly frozen up. Even now Naruto held his eyes shut and slowed his breathing and hoped with all that he was that Murphy had noted him over yet again. As much as I would enjoy a game of opossum with you, I would much rather have a civil conversation. Finally the disembodied voice gained shape, though the shape wasn't exactly welcoming. The owner of the voice seemed to literally melt out of the shadows, shrouded in an all-black cloak that looked like it had seen better days. Regardless of its torn and ragged appearance, it still served the purpose of completely covering the figure from head to toe. The only thing really discernible about the figure was that he was damn near 6 foot, was male, and his body looked to be built to hit both hard and fast. Despite his rather bleak and short life, Naruto liked to think himself an optimist of sorts, but even he knew that there was no escape. While the figure had been talking to him, he brought up his mental map of the area and knew that any and all escape routes would require him to expend energy he just simply did not have at this moment. Even if he could somehow muster some magical force to give him an extra energy boost, he knew that based on what his instincts were telling him about this imposing dark figure standing only feet from him, he would not make it too far. Sighing, the sun-kissed blonde decided that if the stranger had wanted him dead, he would have not been getting up anytime soon, and if the stranger was just biding his time or drawing it out, well, he was already dead, so might as well enjoy it. Naruto attempted to rise into a sitting position, but soon hissed in pain and groped at his chest in a bid to stop the horrible pulsing pain coming from there. Suddenly the pain was replaced by a warm feeling washing over his body. Naruto would have fallen asleep if it were not for the rather loud sound of something metallic clattering at his side. Looks like when you pulled off that little slide maneuver of yours, you weren't exactly paying attention to what was on that floor. Turning his head to look at what had caused the metallic clang, he saw that the figure had pulled out a handful of thin jagged pieces of some kind of metal. Mustering what breath he could, Naruto managed to mutter out a small, "Thank you." "No problem, kid. Now how about we get to that little chat of ours, hum?" Reaching out his hands, the figure grabbed Naruto around the small of his back and raised him into a sitting position against the wall. The figure unceremoniously plopped himself down onto the floor in a cross-legged sitting position. Ensuing was a very awkward silence. Naruto tried to find out anything else about this mysterious man as subtly as he could, with no success. The damn cloak hid everything from sight. Naruto couldn't even make out a face or piece of hair because of the cloak's hood. "So, I'm assuming you have some questions you wanna ask me, huh?" began the strange man. Well, what did you do to get those metal shards out of me without, well, cutting me open?" questioned the young blonde. "Well, that's a pretty lengthy explanation, so in a nutshell, I healed you," provided the figure with an obvious chuckle at the end. Having to resist the very heavy urge to either sweatdrop or facepalm, Naruto attempted to move the conversation forward by asking his next question. Well, why did you help me? I'm not ungrateful or anything, but, well, most people wouldn't do that for me." "Well, that answer is pretty simple. I'm not most people. More specifically, I'm not some inbred, backwards, hat villager that can't tell the difference between a jailer and its ward," spoke the figure in a calm and even tone, which was surprising considering the colorful words he had just used. What now?" spoke the now thoroughly confused Uzumaki. Don't get him wrong, he agreed with the man's views on the villagers, but the whole bit about a prisoner and ward had left him at a loss. "I see, so you don't know. What do you know about the night of October 10th? spoke the now serious figure. Though how Naruto knew that he had no clue because that damnable cloak. "My birthday?" asked the now even more confused blonde. "Yes, your birthday, and also the day of the Kyuubi attack," continued the shadowed figure. "Well, the Kyuubi attacked and the Yondaime Hokage fought it and eventually defeated it, saving the village but at the cost of his own life," Naruto stated. "Right?" he added, now feeling very suspicious. Shifting his body so that he leaned against the wall across from the young kid, he sighed and began. "Well, that is mostly true. You are missing some very vital parts to the story. First off, yes, the Yondaime fought the Kyuubi and died to defeat it, but the reason he died was because he used a kinjutsu that summoned the Shinigami. Now not even the Shinigami could destroy the Kyuubi, as it is a huge massive construct of chakra, or in other words energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So instead the Yondaime did, well, something retarded. He chose a baby that had been born that night, and that was as far as the stranger got before he was interrupted by Naruto, and sealed it into the baby, and that baby was me, wasn't it?" Most thought Naruto to be some stupid kid who knew next to nothing. While that was true in regards to academics, when it came to practical matters regarding survival and problem solving, the kid was a damn genius. It took him seconds to connect the dots. His birthday, the attack, the looks and stares, the fox hunts, and, damn, how had he not figured this out sooner? There was just no way that there could be that many coincidences without there being a reason. With a heavy sigh, the stranger replied, "You got it, kiddo." Giving Naruto a few seconds to deal with this rather significant revelation, the stranger then continued, "So how you feeling there?" Why? was the soft reply. Giving another sigh, the figure stood to his full height and leaning against the same wall, intoned, "Gonna have to be a little bit more specific than that short stuff. Why did he choose me for it? Was it convenience? Did my parents not care? Who were my parents? No more lies. Ended the now sobbing 8-year-old. The stranger couldn't blame the kid. The poor bastard had grown up an orphan, hated by most anyone he had ever encountered, and when he had found someone he thought he could trust and who genuinely cared for him, he finds out the old monkey had only been lying to him. I didn't really know your parents personally. But I can say this, when your mother found out she was pregnant with you, not a one person could get her to shut up about how she was going to spoil you and treat you like a prince. When your father found out, he ran around the whole village screaming at the top of his lungs that he was going to be a father. Kid, your parents loved you more than anything in this world and would have done anything to make sure you were okay. At the end of his speech, the cloak wearer saw Naruto smiling the biggest smile possible and silently crying. What happened to them? Asked the still smiling and crying blonde. His parents loved him so obviously there was a damn good reason they weren't there for him. That's both complicated and simple. To start, your mother was a gorgeous and deadly redhead kunoichi by the name of Kushina Uzumaki. Chapter 2. Konohagakure no Sato, the strongest hidden village in all of the shinobi world. And after having survived all three of the great ninja wars as well an attack from the strongest of the Biju, it had rightfully earned that title. However, at this moment Konoha didn't seem to be the strongest ninja village but rather a city like any other. Shopkeepers were opening their stores for the day, foreign merchants were setting up tents and stalls, there was a blonde teen racing through the market district, mothers were walking with their children, and the sounds of someone vehemently cursing the evil beings known as paperwork could be heard throughout the village. Yes, just another day in Konoha. I can never just catch a damn break, huh? It's always gotta be something. Spoke the blonde teen known as Naruto. A lot had happened in the years following Naruto's meeting with the strange cloaked man, though from an outside perspective it seemed as though nothing had ever changed. To most, Naruto was still the blonde idiot who some, though a significantly less amount, still wanted dead. Soon after the meeting with the man, Naruto had almost disappeared from Konoha. For about 2 years the only time anyone saw him was when he would come into town for the occasional visit to Ichiraku Ramen, and after that not even the Anbu could find him. The Sandaime knew this for a fact, as he had tried to find out what the blonde was doing and where he was going by having Anbu tail him. But try as they might, they could not find hide nor hair of the Jinchuriki unless he was seated at his stool in the ramen stand. Soon Sarutobi grew worried. The part of him that saw the little blonde Uzumaki as his grandson feared that something or someone had gotten their hands on him, and the Kami no Shinobi side of him feared much the same but for an entirely different reason. After all, it would not do to have Konoha's Jinchuriki fall into the wrong hands. Then after 2 years it seemed as though Naruto had moved back into Konoha from wherever he had been for those 2 years. A vast majority of the people who had hated Naruto had seemingly either forgotten about it or moved on with their lives in those years as well. This meant that by the time Naruto had moved back in, he was seen as just another villager. Only about 30% of the village still hated him, and less than half of those people would actually put any effort into showing it with more than just a dirty look or sneer. All in all, village life had continued on smoothly regardless of Naruto's being there or not, and much the same was happening in the academy as well. Where Naruto had been the dead last of his class before his mysterious vanishing, he was now an average student. He scored decently on tests, both practical and written, and his clothing even reflected this mundane new Naruto. Gone was the bright orange jumpsuit, to be replaced by plain black shinobi pants with various pouches and taped at his ankles, a long-sleeved black shirt whose sleeves he rolled up to his forearms, black shinobi sandals, and black fingerless gloves with the Uzumaki spiral engraved on the metal plate. Though this was still Naruto, and regardless of how he changed, two things forever remained the same: his unhealthy obsession with ramen and his love for the color orange. In homage to his love of said fruit color, he wore 2 leather strips, those things Sasuke wears in the Chunin exam, on each wrist in a burnt orange color. The only hiccup seen upon Naruto's return was his placement in the academy. He had not attended classes during his 2-year absence, and his performance before that was not exactly something one would want to present. The head of the academy, who actually saw the potential in the blonde, decided that it was for the best that he be placed in the class 2 years below his, the class of clan heirs. When he had found that out, Naruto had a small chuckle at the irony of a class full of the clan heirs. Seeing as he carried both Uzumaki and by extension Senju blood in him, with him in the class all of the founding clans of Konoha were being represented. Jumping back to the present, the reason for our blonde protagonist letting out a rather colorful string of words was because he had stayed up training to perfect one of the higher-tier techniques the strange man had left to him and consequently woke up late. Now he was running at Chunin speeds to reach the academy in time for the exams today. He had no illusions of him not passing. When he had mysteriously vanished, he had spent those 2 years in the deepest, most forgotten forests of Hai no Kuni training to the ground. Thanks to the cloaked man, who he had later learned was named Vincent, and his present of several large scrolls each covering a branch of the shinobi arts and liberal use of kage bunshins, God, that technique was so op, he had grown by leaps and bounds. He had exited that forest with the strength of a seasoned chunin in all areas of the shinobi arts excluding Iryo Jutsu, healing arts, and Genjutsu, which he was at mid-genin level with both. But hey, can you blame him? He held in his gut a 1,000-year-old massive construct of chakra whose species were known masters of illusions and who healed almost any wound save life-threatening ones in seconds to minutes, and even the life-threatening ones could be healed given a day or two of rest. And that was coming from a 10-year-old. When he had started living in the village once more, his training may have slowed in comparison to his time in the forest, what with various factions breathing down his neck and all, but he had still maintained a rather rigorous training regimen. At this point in time he was rather confident that he was at least mid-Junin level with almost all branches of the ninja arts. However, thanks to his Uzumaki blood, he was damn close to being a master at Fuinjutsu. Somewhere near his father's level, but not even close to his mother's near sage level of mastery. Thanks to journals and notes from both his parents, which he had liberated from Sarutobi, and his own blood, his growth in the area was astounding. If anybody knew of Naruto's true skill level, they would call bullshit, both because of his track record and in the shinobi world knowledge may win some battles, but it was experience that won wars. There was no better example of this than their own Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The man had seen more in his lifetime than even he was comfortable with admitting. Generally speaking, the man was, yes, a powerful shinobi with his library of jutsu, but it was his experience and know-how that allowed him to use said jutsu to their maximum potential and saw him survive the 3 great ninja wars, had won him innumerable battles, and had earned him the title of Kami no Shinobi. To those naysayers, Naruto would simply scoff. He had not trained that hard and learned as much as he did without knowing that. Both his mother and father had overly stressed the dangers of arrogance in their world. His father had stated in one of his journals that, an arrogant shinobi is a dead shinobi even if they don't know it yet. What people didn't know was that Naruto had indeed gained some battle experience these past 4 years. When he needed money, he would venture out, sometimes in a cloak reminiscent of the man who had saved his life, and bingo book in hand search out bounties. He started off only going after the smaller D-rank bounties in the first few months, but in the last year he had begun to hunt some plenty powerful C-rank missing nin. That wasn't taking into account the many odd creatures he had begun encountering occasionally when he visited the older parts of Hai no Kuni. They all varied in size and various shades of black or dark green, but it was easy to see how they were all of the same species. The creatures all had tight gaunt skin stretched across their frames showing their bones in some sections, an elongated skull with sickly yellow eyes, a mouth full of teeth as sharp as any kunai, and they were nearly all covered in spikes that looked like broken bones that could be used as either a blunt weapon or a sawing blade depending on the individual creature. He did not know what the hell they were, but they were strong, fought in packs of 5 or 8, and were a pain to kill with their spiked hide. Back to the present once more, we see Naruto jump onto a tree branch next to the academy and leaping through a window land in his customary seat with arms folded and feet kicked up on the desk. "You can never just do anything halfway, can you?" came the giggling voice of one of Naruto's best friends, Yakumo Kurama. He had found the girl crying to herself when he was coming back from one of his many bounty hunts. Naruto could not stand the sight of a crying girl and so had gone to try and comfort her. He may have succeeded if not for the Edo demon that occupied her mind taking advantage of its container's broken state and attempting to use Naruto to escape. The Edo had made a very big mistake trying this. The demon may have been powerful in its own right, but it was nowhere even close to the level of power that Naruto's own demon wielded. Suffice to say that Kyuubi did not like to share, especially when it came to its Jinchuriki. When the Edo had tried to take over the blonde's mind via Genjutsu, it found itself face to face with a pissed Kitsune. Kyuubi had then proceeded to absorb a quarter of the illusion demon's Genjutsu power to give to its container. Since it was not a power of the bijus, the seal would not try and stop the chakra from spreading, allowing Naruto more power in the area of illusions. It then gave Naruto a seal much like his own containing the rest of the demons, filth. Upon return to the living world, Yakumo knew that the preteen in front of her had helped to remove the evil from her and had lunged at him crying and muttering, "Thank you," over and over into his cloak. Naruto merely patted her back and held her. When she had regained composure, he had explained what the seal he now had was and that it would siphon the power the Edo had back into her at a stable rate, allowing her to grow into the power. She had asked him to help her with her training and he had agreed to do so after suffering at the hands of the infamous puppy dog no jutsu. A year later he had asked why she thought he could help her when not even a Junin could, and she had simply shrugged and said, "Because something was telling me that you could." After a year of training with Naruto, the two had become near inseparable, and Yakumo was one of 3 people who knew the real Naruto and his story. Confident in her own prowess, she had asked the Hokage to allow her into the academy alongside the blonde and other clan heirs. After a small display of her capabilities, he had readily signed the paper admitting her into the academy. "Well, it is Naruto, so is it really a surprise?" came the other giggling voice to his left, belonging to one Ino Yamanaka. She had seen how well the two had been doing and in the last year of their academy days asked how. They had simply told her that they trained. Not fully believing them, she had demanded that they help her too. Then, after a small debate, they had agreed, and a month into the hell known as Naruto's Kick Your Ass into Shape bootcamp, patent pending, she could see the truth of their words. As she grew as a nin to be, she also grew in maturity. She saw what her diet was truly doing to her body, how she had strained relationships with others for some boy, and so had set on a path to right her wrongs. Her parents were all too happy to see their little girl trying her hardest, and after a tearful hugging session they were a happy family once more. She had attempted to mend her friendship with Sakura, but the girl was too far gone as a fangirl and was convinced Ino was just trying to one-up her. Seeing that it was a wasted effort, she had reconnected with her childhood friends Shikamaru and Choji. Soon, though, it was obvious how close Ino had grown to Naruto, and she was often seen with him around the village along with Yakumo. The two preteens had seen what feelings the other had for the young blonde and started a rivalry of sorts to see who would claim the Kyuubi container first. They still respected the other though and kept it small and trivial, or as small and trivial as they could. The older generation often joked that the two's rivalry closely resembled the rivalry of one hip, silver-haired Junin and his youthful counterpart. "Why must the two of you be so mean to me?" spoke the now crying blonde. "Oh, hush up, you big baby," spoke the ever bossy Yamanaka. "You act like we actually hurt your," she started, only to stare in shock and slight rage as she saw the black-clad form of her crush wailing into the arms of her brunette rival, who was currently consoling the blonde by stroking his hair, whispering things about the mean blonde not hurting him while she was around. "Oi, the hell," she shouted at the two. "See, Ino, this is why he likes me more," Yakumo said while being as mature as possible. "Okay," she was sticking her tongue out at Ino, "but that's besides the point, right? He does not. Watch, I'll show you, you damn brunette." Rounding on the blonde, she instantly went from jealous and angry to sweet and innocent whilst pulling a bowl of ramen from somewhere. "Oh Naruto, look what I got for our special day today," she damn near sang. The once wailing blonde was now happily munching on the bowl of ambrosia, to him at least, while leaning into the embrace of his fellow blonde. Seeing her plan working, she blew a raspberry at the brunette, who was currently pounding her head on the desk muttering, "How could I forget the damn ramen?" "All right, shut the hell up you brats and get ready," came the booming voice of Iruka Yumino, the class Chunin instructor. "Get ready. The Genin exams begin now." Across the village in the Hokage Tower we find the Sandaime along with a group of Junin instructors peering into his crystal ball, watching the very same exams. Blowing on his pipe of whatever the hell he had in there, the cage spoke, "You heard the man. It begins. Let's see this how this year's hopefuls do." Nay. Chapter 3. The first part of the exams will be a written, testing your knowledge of our history and some battlefield situations you may find yourself in. Iruka lectured as he and his assistant Mizuki passed out the test papers. "You will have 1 hour to finish this exam and no more. If you are caught cheating, you will be penalized 3 points off your test. If you are caught twice, you will fail this portion of the exam," continued Mizuki. As soon as all the papers had been passed out, Iruka gave the signal to begin and the students were off. Right off the bat, a handful of the students from civilian families had earned a failed status. Iruka and Mizuki of course noticed far more than just those students cheating, but considering their methods of doing so met the cheating standards of the test, they simply ignored them. The ones that they, or at least Iruka, worried over were Naruto and his little group. Naruto seemed to have fallen asleep, much like a certain Nara not too far from him. Yakumo was merely looking out the window, and Ino was just filing her nails with a kunai. As time whittled down, more of the civilian students received a fail grade. Kiba had gotten caught once using Akamaru, Shikimaru had gotten caught trying to help Choji, and one of the fangirls had gotten caught attempting to help Sasuke, though he didn't much need it. Sakura had filled it out on her own. Prowess, if you could call it that. Shino, well, no one knew what the hell he had been doing behind that collar and dark glasses, and Hinata had used her Byakugan to help her out. After the clock had run out, the instructors gathered the tests and Mizuki led the class outside for the other portions of the exam while Iruka did some quick grading. Once outside, all the students proceeded to stretch or give some sign of relief, showing their happiness at finally getting out of the stuffy classroom. Alright, now we'll be moving on to the field exams. First up, we got accuracy tests. You will be given 10 kunai and then 10 shuriken. The goal is to aim for the center of the dummy. We will be going in alphabetical order, so Shino, you're up first. With that, Mizuki stood aside with a clipboard ready to write down the marks. Shino, in the style of a true Aburame, merely flung the kunai in groups of 2, showing as little effort as possible. He did the same with the shuriken, earning him a score of 17/20. One by one the students went up, with the clan air group earning no less than 15/20 and Sasuke earning a 19/20, though Yakumo and Ino scored the same, which surprised everybody in the class. It was finally Naruto's turn, and deciding to show off a bit, he grabbed all 10 kunai in between his fingers and casually tossed them. Grabbing the shuriken in a show of speed and dexterity, he fired them off not even a millisecond later. None of the weapons hit the designated target, and most of the class was laughing at the blondes' mess up. Yakumo and Ino had to contain themselves from kicking all their asses for being dumbasses. Hinata was shyly thinking some weird Naruto obsessive shit that cannot be mentioned with children around, and the other clan heirs merely stood to the side shaking their heads. Naruto UFAI was as far as the smirking Chunin got before he was interrupted by the voice of his fellow instructor. Actually, Naruto may not have hit the designated target, but he has demonstrated something even better. Each of his weapons has hit either a vital organ, an area that would leave the enemy near death, or a one-hit kill spot. So I think he deserves full marks on this one. Don't you, Mizuki? Spoke the scarred the Chunin. Gritting his teeth in anger, the scarred Chunin replied with a strained, "You're right, Iruka. Kid's good, I'll give him that." Spoke a certain Cyclopean Junin. "You are correct, my eternal rival. The young Uzumaki's flames of youth burn brie. Damn it, guy. Shut the hell up. Now is not the time for your fucking flames of youth." Such unyouthful words coming from a lady. Enko, a woman such as yourself should not utter such. For Kami-sama's sake, if you don't shut the hell up, guy, I will personally make you more aerodynamic by removing what makes you a man. Let's get back to those genin exams, yay. There's no way the idiot scored better than my Sasuke-kun. Guess who? Sakura, I swear if you utter one more word I will show you why spies fear getting a visit from someone like my daddy. And let me tell you this, we Yamanaka give a new meaning to the term, mind fucking. Got it? After the Yamanaka heir had said her piece, many students had gained a new fear of crossing Ino. Moving on then, spoke the slightly fearful pineapple-haired Chunin. In his short stint as an Anbu he had heard many things about the famed Yamanaka interrogators, and suffice to say even Ibiki feared them and their Kekai Genkei. We will now be moving on to the taijutsu section of the exams. You will either be paired with me or Mizuki based on a random drawing. You will have to last anywhere between 1 to 2.5 minutes in the ring to pass. No weapons or jutsu of any kind are allowed, though you may use chakra to enhance your body. If you step out of bounds or are soundly defeated by either of us before the time limit, then you will fail this section. Keep in mind you must pass at least 3 of the 4 exams in order to receive a headband from this academy. Line up in any order, and when it is your turn, draw a name from the hat. In groups of 2 the line thinned until only the Uchiha heir and the Uzumaki heir remained. Naruto decided to go first, and sticking his hand in the hat drew out the first piece of paper he felt. Unfurling the paper he read aloud with a grin, "I got you Iruka-sensei. Guess that means you get Mizuki then Sasuke." And to that the emo merely h-end, yup, Sasuke officially had his own verb. Strolling into the ring, Naruto and Iruka bowed to each other before assuming the academy stance. "Don't go easy on me now Naruto, you got it," spoke the grinning Chunin. "Well, I don't know you are getting on in years there sensei," joked the blonde genin to be. "Naruto, I am so kicking you for that comment now. What's that old ma? Hajime." And with that Iruka raced towards Naruto at about genin level speeds. Deciding to start off simple, Iruka began his assault with a simple punch aimed at the blonde's face. Naruto had of course seen this coming miles away and decided he wanted to reveal some of what he could truly do to his pseudo-brother. A short hop later and Naruto was standing on Iruka's outstretched hand. Striking at near Junin speeds, Naruto aimed a kick to the side of Iruka's head. Now he may have quit Anbu years ago, but that didn't mean his skills had dulled too much, and with a turn of his wrist and ducking his whole body, Iruka held Naruto by the ankle and using momentum attempted to slam the black-clad academy student into the ground. The Jinchuriki may have been surprised at this turn of events, but he quickly recomposed himself and seeing what was happening stretched out both arms and pumped a bit of chakra through the limbs, allowing him to stop his body from meeting the ground without injury. Using the chakra built up in his arms, he pushed back against Iruka and using his free leg donkey kicked his sensei in the solar plexus, successfully knocking the wind out of the tanned Chunin and freeing his other leg. Taking advantage of his sensei's lack of air and surprise, he twisted his body from being on the ground on all fours and in little more than milliseconds was in the air with a kick heading straight for the instructor's ribs. Iruka, not wanting to get hit in the chest twice in a row, brought up his left arm and blocked the kick aimed at his ribs. To his surprise, he actually felt the bones in his left limb rattle from the power of his student's kick. Sending chakra through his left arm to dull the pain and making note to dodge instead of block any further attacks, the scarred man used the same hand he had used to block to grab Naruto's outstretched hand and use it to pull the blonde into his range. With Naruto quickly heading towards him, Iruka twisted around so his back was to his pseudo-little brother and forcefully rammed his right elbow into the surprised academy student's gut, sending spittle all over his shoulder. Trying to not give the blonde room to counter, Iruka kept his hand wrapped tightly around Naruto's wrist and sending his right arm under the armpit of his student, he once more tried to slam the Kyuubi container into the ground. This time Naruto let his legs fall to the ground first, absorbing the shock and once again stopping him from meeting Mother Earth. Letting his body go completely slack on the ground, he used his free hand to grab onto Iruka's arm that was still latched onto his own, and curling into a semi-ball he pulled himself up and his sensei down to introduce the bottom of his sandals to Iruka's face. The last thought Iruka had before he made out with Naruto's sandals was, "Fuck, this is gonna hurt like a bye." As the last 2 rounds of the taijutsu test had started, many of the students assumed that the match between Sasuke and Mizuki would be the one to watch. But with Mizuki trying to suck up to the Uchiha air by going easy on him and leaving all kinds of openings in his attacks, it was over before Naruto and Iruka had even started theirs. With that, all the students turned to watch their other sensei fight with Naruto. Based on Naruto's standing in the class, the students had assumed it was going to be nothing special, but boy were they surprised when Naruto had, in the blink of an eye, stood on Iruka's arm and lashed out with a kick aimed at their sensei's head. As the match continued, the jaws of everyone there continued to drop lower and lower. Even Yakumo and Ino were surprised at the level of power the two were fighting at. They knew Naruto was strong, but he had never showed them how truly skilled he was. Everyone was even more surprised with how evenly matched the two were. The students of course knew that their instructor was strong in his own right, but with as comical and boring as he seemed most of the time, they would have never imagined that Iruka could fight at such a level. In the Hokage Tower, the group of Junin and even the Hokage himself were shocked at the level of skill being displayed by an academy student and a Chunin instructor. Some among the group knew that Iruka had been in Anbu at one time, but thought that after years of teaching at the academy that his skills would have dulled considerably, but here he was grappling and fighting at a mid-Junin level. Even more surprising was the fact that one Naruto Uzumaki was the one responsible for pushing Iruka to fight at that level. Now what the academy students didn't realize was that this was even more shocking because this was pure taijutsu being used. Many of the Junin and even the Hokage himself suspected that had this been an anything goes kind of match there would have been a great deal of collateral damage as well as many more surprises. This also confirmed for Sarutobi that Naruto had been hiding a great deal of his true strength, among other things. Normally this wouldn't bother him, but considering this was both someone he considered his grandson and the village's Jinchuriki, he couldn't very well let it slide without knowing the true extent of the young teen's power. It also didn't help that Naruto had stopped referring to him as Gigi and their bond had become strained when the young blonde had fuck. He knew something had happened when Naruto had vanished. Looks like he would need to have a talk with the blonde Uzumaki soon. As Naruto was helping Iruka walk back to where the rest of the class was, his instinct screamed that something was going to happen soon. Taking note of it, he broadened the area that his senses normally encompassed to a slightly larger area. He also made sure to activate his empath sense as well to be even safer. Naruto had always been able to get a feel for what intentions people had for him ever since he could walk, but it wasn't until he met Vincent that he understood why. It seemed that being an empath was somewhat of an Uzumaki trait, and it had appeared in several of the Uzumaki clan's greatest clan heads to some degree. He guessed that he must have inherited it from his mother, and thanks to having the mightiest of the tailed beast stuck in his gut, the sense had been amplified to even greater heights. He wondered if it would be passed down to any children he had, like a Kekkei Genkei. For the moment he just put that thought into the "ask Kyuubi later" pile. Alright class, on to the last portion of the exam. You will be asked to perform the basic 3 academy jutsu, Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin. If you have anything else you feel would showcase another skill you have, this would be the time to do so. Anything you show will be counted as extra credit, announced Iruka. Majority of the civilian students fared decently enough on at least 2 out of the 3 jutsu, and a handful of them even had some other jutsu or skill they had learned elsewhere, earning them their headbands. The clan heirs all did perfect on the basic 3, and all of them had a clan jutsu to show off what their clan was known for. Deciding to return to his average performance again, Naruto performed the 3 jutsu as asked, and as extra credit performed a minor wind jutsu that would put out campfires or cover tracks, which disappointed Iruka, Yakumo, and Ino, as they had wanted to see what else Naruto could do. Wrapping his arms around the shoulders of his 2 best friends and with his patented foxy grin on, Naruto said, "So girls, we've passed our genin exam and are free the rest of today. What say we go celebrate?" "Sorry Ruto, but daddy and my mom wanted to have a family dinner to celebrate tonight," sighed the slightly saddened Ino. She loved her family dearly, but she was still very tempted to go with her crush. "Yay, my aunt and uncle wanted to do the same. Sorry Naru-kun, but I promise we'll do something together tomorrow, okay?" Yakumo said, trying to cheer up the blonde. Though his foxy grin was now gone, he still smiled to cover up his sadness in front of the girls. "Yay, of course. Don't even worry about it. You two go home and have fun, alright?" With a hug and a kiss on the cheek from both girls, Naruto found himself alone. He had come to accept his life as an orphan long ago, and thanks to his somewhat sensei Vincent he had gained closure with the matter. That still didn't make it any less depressing on days like these. As he mused on what it would have been like had the events the night of his birth not happened, he found himself in one of the taller trees surrounding the village walls. As he was gazing at the moon, his senses flared, and his empath sense, he really should come up with a name for it, warned him that there was someone feeling very anxious and devious close by. Turning around and sending chakra into his eyes to allow him to see further, he spotted a man he didn't really like and who didn't really like him carrying something he shouldn't. Deciding to take out some of his more negative feelings on the bastard, he jumped down onto a lower branch and waited. Kami-sama, this guy was slow. Right as Naruto's patience was about to run out, Mizuki burst out of the foliage with a crazed grin on his face. Naruto's sweat dropped at the fact that Mizuki hadn't even noticed him yet. God, how the hell did this guy even become a chunin? Shrugging and deciding to take advantage of the situation at hand, Naruto waited for the right moment before he leapt up and axe-kicked Mizuki, sending him plummeting to the forest floor. Naruto waited for a bit before he heard the satisfying sound of the traitor's body hitting the floor and the subsequent scream of pain accompanying it. Chuckling to himself, he calmly leapt down to the forest floor to find Mizuki struggling to get out of the crater he found himself in. Whistling, Naruto began, "I guess I put more power into that than I thought. Oops, haha. What the hell? What the are you doing here, demon?" came the pained voice of Mizuki. "Ouch Mizuki, you wound me," Naruto said with a fake hurt look. And I was actually just out enjoying the lovely night air when I happen upon you with what looks like the village's scroll of sealing. Now I may have just gotten my hit I ate, but I'm pretty sure that Chunins don't have that kind of clearance. Finally getting into a standing position, even though he was shaking and hurting all over, he grunted out, "Fuck you, demon brat. I won't even be marked as a missing nin if I kill you here and now." Sweet dropping once more, Naruto began, "Okay, seriously, how stupid are you? First off, the majority of the villagers don't even give a shit about what I do anymore, and look at where you are and what happened all of like a minute ago." Scoffing, Mizuki defended, "That was just because you caught me off guard. There's no way you could." Actual L was as far as Mizuki got before he was interrupted by Naruto's foot meeting his face. The Chunin-turned-traitor was then reminded that Hai no Kuni's trees were some of the thickest and hardest in the whole elemental countries, and it didn't look like he was getting up anytime soon. "Are you serious?" Face-palming, Naruto sighed and gathered the traitor on one shoulder and the scroll of sealing on the other. He had no need for it because most of the jutsu didn't suit his style, and any that did were already in either the scrolls Vincent gave him or in the ones his parents had left to him. Guess it's time for that talk with Sarutobi. Probably what all my senses were warning me about. Chapter 4. Sarutobi was a very patient man, and if all you did for most of your day was sit behind a desk and do paperwork, you'd be patient too. Or insane, probably both. But his young pseudo-grandson was testing this patience. He knew that Naruto knew that he wanted to see him for very important business, and Hiruzen knew damn well that Naruto was far from slow if that short fight with Mizuki was anything to go by, so why the blonde teen still wasn't in his office after 10 minutes was trying his patience. Finally, a highly frustrated Hiruzen got up and announced, "Okay, that's it, I am tired of waiting." And waiting for who, ya old monkey? Only 4 people had ever had the gall to call him that, and with 2 of them dead and another traveling the countries to maintain a spy network that left only one person who that voice could belong to. Turning around, he spotted the teen he had been waiting for casually sitting on a chair in the corner of his office munching on a bowl of ramen. He then spotted the body of one unconscious silver-haired traitor along with the scroll of sealing haphazardly thrown on the sofa next to said teen. "How the I'm getting way too old for this shit," lamented one very stressed Hokage. "I'll say, I've been here for the past like 3 minutes waiting on you to notice me," chimed the Jinchuriki. "I'm not even going to try and dignify that with a response. Now first off, Anbu." With that, 3 shadows appeared standing as straight as possible in front of the Hokage. "I want 2 of you to escort Mizuki to the T&I department and find out exactly who he was working for, and I want the last one of you to take the scroll of sealing back to its proper place in my library." With a small hi, the 3 Anbu along with the scroll and Mizuki vanished from the room. Turning his gaze upon the now serious blonde, he began, "Now Naruto, we need to have a talk. First, I would like to congratulate you on completing your first A-rank mission. Your mission pay will be deposited into your account before the night is out. However, we have more pressing matters to attend to." Sarutobi noticeably sagged in his chair and assumed a look that showed how old the man actually was. "What happened to you? First you disappear for 2 years, and when you come back you're hiding things from me. You stop calling me G." "Let me stop you there, Sarutobi." Naruto cut in with an uncharacteristically serious tone and stern look. "I'm gonna tell you this right now. Where I went and what I did is frankly none of your business. All I will tell you is that I received help from someone, and that same someone revealed to me things that had been kept away from me for far too long." Sarutobi noticeably cringed at that. "I feared that that was the case. I take it you know everything then. Everything from the fox to who my parents were, yes. Something you continuously lied to me about on several occasions. And that is the reason I no longer call you Gigi. You lost all the respect I had for you that day. But Naruto, you have to understand why I did it. I understand perfectly, Hiruzen. You were protecting the village from Iwa and Kumo coming for blood. And don't say it was for me. Had I been just any other child you wouldn't have cared. It's because I'm the village's weapon on a leash that you did all this. But what you don't understand is that though you may have saved the village and me from Iwa and Kumo, but you damned me to a hell designed by the very same village you had sworn to protect. Naruto, they were just idiots that knew too much because someone thought it was a good idea to blab who the container of the demon was. The same demon who not hours before had nearly decimated the whole village. But your father wanted For me to be seen as a hero, yes, but that's not what he had in mind. Why do you think nobody knew that my mother was the container? Why no one knew that Mito Uzumaki was the container? They were powerful kunoichi married to equally powerful shinobi, cages no less. And even they feared what would happen if the secret were to get out. At this point Sarutobi's age as well as the sins he had committed had really begun to show on his face. Even sadder was that at this moment he had stopped being the Hokage and was now just an old man who had made far too many mistakes in his long life. "Please, I'm sorry, Naruto," cried the broken man with tears running down his face. "I had your best intentions in mind. I never meant for any of this to happen. At one time I loved you like a grandfather. You were one of the few people I would have given my life for. I respected you. At one time you were truly the Kami no Shinobi, a respected and feared man. Now all I see is an old man who is too afraid to rock the boat for fear of another war breaking out." "Maybe you should listen to yourself for once," sneered Naruto. "You're always preaching about Konoha and the will of fire, and you're right. There is a reason we came out of all three of the shinobi world wars not just alive but as the strongest of the hidden villages. Why we were able to survive an attack from the strongest of all the Biju and come back from it. This village stands as the strongest for a damn good reason. It's because we fought tooth and nail to earn that title." As Naruto finished venting all that he had pent up for years to the old Hokage, he walked to the window and opened it. "And you're right, you did have my best intentions at heart, but remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Goodbye, Gigi." With that said, Naruto leapt out into the village, leaving the broken man. As Naruto spoke his last words, something inside the man had snapped. "I have lived my life regretting far too many things. I'm no better than Tsunade trying to drown her sorrows in liquor and gambling. It was because of this sorry state I was in that Orochimaru got away and is now one of our biggest threats. Enough is enough. I am the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. I earned the title of Kami no Shinobi through blood, sweat, and tears. This is my village. They are my ninja," thought the now revitalized man. Looking at where Naruto last stood, he thought, "Naruto, I have made a mess of not just your life but of so many others, and for that I am sorry. I may never earn the right to be called your Gigi again, but I promise you that I will try my damnedest to become the man you had once respected." With a steely look in his eyes he began to work. And on that night a fire not seen in decades began to burn once more. The Kami no Shinobi was back. Chapter 5. Today was the day that some Junin looked forward and others despised, Genin Assignment Day. Even those that weren't going to be Junin senseis were here to see how the Genin hopefuls had done as well as who Kakashi would be failing this year. Of course said Scarecrow wasn't even here yet, which wasn't surprising in the least. Finally the Hokage walked in and immediately all talking stopped, and not out of respect for the Hokage but more out of shock at the aura they were feeling from the man. Many of the younger Junin were surprised at the almost oppressive aura the Sandaime was putting out, and others like Asuma and Guy hadn't felt this aura around him since the Third Great Shinobi War when the man was much younger. Asuma merely smirked and thought, "Looks like Dad got his fire back. This is gonna be interesting." Right as the Hokage had opened his mouth to speak, Kakashi shunshined into the middle of the room, book in hand, and lazily drawled out, "Sorry for being late, Hokage-sama. I was." "Enough," Hiruzen shouted, flaring his chakra slightly, showing them why he was Hokage. "I have heard enough of your excuses, Kakashi. I've let it slide before because you are one of the more powerful shinobi we have in our forces, but no more. You are a ninja of this village and I am your Hokage. When I tell you to be somewhere at a certain time, you will be there 5 minutes early. Do you understand me, Junin?" Kakashi noticeably straightened his posture and instantly put his book away. "Hi. It won't happen again, Hokage-sama." And with a bow Kakashi walked back to his fellow Junin. He may be strong and Sarutobi may have aged, but he had no doubt that the Hokage could still bat him around like a pinball if he so chose. "Now, like I was about to say, we are here to assign Genin teams." As usual, those Junin who either volunteered to become senseis or were persuaded to do so, at that he cast a glance at Kakashi, have already voted on who they would like. "So those of you who chose to teach these Genin, please step forward." At this, Asuma, Kurenai, Kakashi, Hayate, and Genma stepped up in front of the Hokage's desk. "I have reviewed the teams you all wanted, and normally I would agree with your choices. However, in light of certain events, I have chosen to make some changes." Many of the Junin senseis were surprised at this. They thought that they had given justifiable enough reason to get those that they had wanted. Asuma, you had wanted to train the next Inoshika Cho team, but I fear that our enemies will have by now made proper countermeasures to combat said team. Instead you will be getting Team 10 consisting of Shino Aburame, Choiji Akamichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. At this some of the Junin gasped. They had figured that Kakashi would have gotten the Uchiha heir due to the Sharingan. Even Asuma was surprised by this and showed it by asking, "Dad, you sure about this? I mean, I can see your logic, but the Uchiha. I'm hardly capable of teaching a Sharingan user. Besides, what would the council say?" "You are correct. You aren't capable of teaching a Sharingan user. But you won't be teaching a Sharingan user. Young Sasuke has as of yet to even unlock his family's dujutsu, and he will already have more than enough resources to train said dujutsu when that time comes. I am giving him to you so that he can learn to fight without the use of his Sharingan." Hiruzen calmly spoke. "Secondly, what of the council? I am the Hokage and these are my ninja to command as I see fit, and they have no say in these matters." "I see. Sorry for doubting you, Pops." With that said, Asuma rejoined the line of Junin. Moving forward, Ms. Yuihi, you will be getting Team 8, which will be Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and Kiba Inazaka. Though the young Hyuga is under a probation of sorts. Thoroughly confused and worried about what the Hokage meant by probation, the red-eyed beauty inquired, "A Hokage-sama? What do you mean by probation?" "That's quite simple. The heiress is far too shy for this line of work. If she has not made a significant amount of progress in said area as well as skill, then she is to be removed from the program and recommended to join the Med Corps instead." Shocked and afraid to say more, Kurenai merely nodded and assumed her place in line once more. "Now Kakashi. You will be receiving the team of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." As he said this, many Junin had their jaws hit the floor. The kid was the son of their Yondaime. After thinking about how similar the two looked for all of 4 seconds, those same Junin face-palmed. The kid was a damn carbon copy of Minato. How had no one realized it? Kakashi was surprised, but not that Naruto was his sensei's son. He had known that for years and had tried his damnedest to adopt the child, but was thwarted by the council at every turn. The most he could do was sneak the kid presents and protect him from mobs when he could. Kakashi was surprised that Sarutobi was finally releasing that information. He guessed the kid already knew about it, so there was no reason to keep it a secret, especially now that he was a genin. Waiting for the sudden outbursts to end, Hiruzen continued, as well as Ino Yamanaka, and Yakumo Kurama. You will be Team 7. Hayate and Genma received teams comprising of those with civilian backgrounds that had also passed the genin exams. As team announcements drew to a close, most of the Junin left to either prepare a rough lesson plan and test for their genin or do Junin things. However, Kakashi stayed behind after receiving a glance from the Hokage. You wanted to speak to me, Hokage-sama? Inquired the silver-haired Junin. Leaning into his chair and taking a puff off his pipe, Hiruzen spoke. Yes, I did. Thanks to certain events, it has come to my attention that Naruto is stronger than what he would have us believe. Much stronger than that. Sir, if I may. He did beat Iruka in an all-out taijutsu match. Also, he is their child. It's not really that much of a surprise if he's stronger than most, is it? Asked the confused Junin. Normally yes, but there are reasons I am telling this to you. First off, as I said earlier, you are one of, if not the strongest Junin that this village has to offer. In a few more years I have no doubt you could claim this hat if you so chose. I am not saying this to praise you but to justify why I gave you the team I did. Hiruzen took a breather and relaxed into his chair more. Yakumo a few years ago was completely incapable of most any kind of physical activity. Kurenai had tried to help her much like Guy helped his young protege, but where Guy succeeded, Kurenai failed. The girl had then become consumed by her darker emotions, and with as potent as her bloodline was her mind, created a defense to stop her power from tearing her apart. Sadly, the defense it chose took the form of a demon named the Edo. The Edo would have consumed her and went on a rampage using her powers to try and destroy our village had she not met a certain blonde. Sarutobi took a pause here. Kakashi saw the look of sadness flash across the man's eyes as he mentioned the blonde teen, but chose not to say anything out of respect for the man in his personal life. I don't know what Naruto did, but only a year later she had gained near full mastery of her Kekkei Genkei, and her physical prowess, while not too impressive, was bordering on genin level. Considering the girl was not too far off from being handicapped by her condition a mere year before makes it all that more astonishing. The Scarecrow was of course surprised by this. He had after all seen the girl perform and she was at least at Chunin level with her taijutsu, as well as with her weapons proficiency. He could only imagine how strong she was when she went all out. Ino Yamanaka was at one time a Sasuke fangirl and was one of the more fervent of the bunch as well. In the last year of the academy she made friends with Naruto and just like Yakumo there was a massive jump in power. The only thing that was keeping her even slightly better than her once friend Sakura was her clan jutsu, but by the last month of the academy the girl was in the running for Rookie of the Year. Sir, I understand that you've given me quite the powerful bunch of genin, but why are you telling me this? Sighing, Sarutobi continued, we had no idea, scratch that we still don't know exactly how powerful Naruto truly is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was closing in on your level of power. The fact that he's known about the Kyuubi and his heritage since he was 8 has allowed him a massive amount of time to train. He has played an active role in training those two girls. If he was smart enough to mask his true power so he could slip under our radar, I have no doubts he convinced those two to do the same as well. What I am saying, Kakashi, is do not take these three lightly. They may well be at Junin level already and Naruto could be even past that if he has learned to harness the power of his ward. Then why did you give them to me, Hokage-sama? I fail to see why they aren't Chunin already, or at least Tokubetsu Genin, questioned the still confused Scarecrow. If they had managed to attain that level of power on their own, what the hell would they need him for? It's actually a mutual relationship. I'm hoping that they'll rub off on you and give you a reason to get even stronger than you are, and I hope that you will guide them on the path they have chosen to walk. They may be powerful, but they are still just young children about to be thrown into a world of liars, thieves, rapists, and murderers wearing the guise of heroes. You know this just as well as I, Kakashi. They will need someone to guide them through those trying times we all go through. I understand, Hokage-sama. If I may be excused now, Kakashi said as he bowed. Yes, you may go. Wow, Mizuki really went down like that. Spoke a sweat-dropping Ino. Yeah, I know the guys was pretty weak compared to us, but geez. Spoke an equally sweat-dropping Yakumo. Wrapping her arms around Naruto's left arm, Yakumo continued, but this is Naru-kun we are talking about, and he is my amazingly strong guy after all. Yakumo said as she laid the sweet innocent girl act on as hard as one possibly could. Whoa, wait a minute. You're amazingly strong guy. He's my strong guy. Once again doing one of her famous 180s in personality, she stuck Naruto's right arm in the middle of her blossoming cleavage and batting her eyelashes she continued, isn't that right, Ruto-kun? She may be just 12, but damn was she already growing in the right places. It also didn't help that as ninja with higher amounts of chakra they naturally matured much faster than average people. And boy was Ino using that to her advantage. Yakumo was as usual left pouting as she lacked in the curves department. That's not to say she wasn't an attractive girl in her own right though. Where Ino was sultry and sexy, Yakumo was classy and refined, though she wasn't being very refined at the moment as she was currently tugging her crush towards herself while childishly sticking her tongue out at the rival for her crush's affection. Naruto was, as usual, left sweat dropping and at a loss for words. He dearly cared for both of the girls but could never find the words to tell them that. He was rather stunted in the affection department after all. Wait a minute. At this, Ino let go of Naruto's arm she had been tugging at, causing the blonde to tumble into Yakumo, landing them in a very compromising position. Yakumo was far from being a prude, but she wasn't a perv either. Never mind the mini collection of Ika she had under her bed. But finding herself underneath the body of her crush centimeters away from touching lips, and it was understandable why the poor girl was blushing as much as she was. Before she could take advantage of the moment, Naruto was yanked to his feet by one very bossy Yamanaka. Making sure to get Ino back at a later time, she stood and dusted herself off. You got some questions to answer, mister? Demanded the demanding Yamanaka. I do. Naruto said as he shook. He knew damn well the power a pissed female could have, and even he wasn't strong enough to fight that battle. Courageous he may be, but stupid he was not. Yay. How come you didn't tell us you were that strong? At this, Yakumo chimed in with a, yay. What do you mean? Questioned Naruto. Well, we knew you were pretty powerful, but we never assumed you were that powerful. I mean, the way you and Iruka were trading blows the other day looked like two seasoned Junin going at it. And Yakumo helpfully nodded at this. Nervously scratching the back of his head and chuckling, Naruto said, "Oh yay, that hee. Thought you two would forget about that thing. Naru-kun, that's mean," pouted Yakumo. "Are you trying to keep secrets from us?" asked Ino as she invaded his personal space. Frantically waving his hands, the blonde Kyuubi container attempted to defend himself. No. It's just, well, I never really had a reason to reveal my strength. But I guess with us being shinobi now, we're going to find ourselves in some tricky positions, so I guess I should share, huh? Gee, you think? The ever-bossy Ino scoffed. Alright, well. Chapter 6. The genin had enjoyed a good weekend of either relaxing or beginning some more intensive training, but nonetheless they were back in their classroom one last time to get their team assignments. Iruka walked in with clipboard in hand and a warm smile on his face. He had seen these kids go from snot-nosed brats to snot-nosed brats who could kill someone with their bare hands and defy all laws of nature at a whim. Ah, the joys of being a teacher. Clearing his throat, he attempted to get the class's attention and was prepared to use his infamous demon head jutsu, but was surprised when they actually shoot up when he asked. He knew that they had realized what kind of life they were going to be walking into and that they would need to be at their best, or they just wanted him to get it over with already. Yay, that last one was probably it. Oh well, he had done his part. It was up to their Junin senseis to knock some more sense into them. Alright class, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I have seen you all grow up into some talented nin to be, and I can say with the utmost confidence that all of you here have the potential to do great things. Who knows, maybe one of you is the next Hokage, or maybe your team will be the next Sannin. But know this, no matter what, watch out for each other. In this world of ours, friends and comrades may be the only thing between you and death. Cherish the bonds you make. You are now ninja of the leaf, so wear your hitai with pride. You are the next carriers of the will of fire. My generation has had our time. The future of Konohagakure no Sato is in your hands now. Do us proud, Iruka announced with the utmost amount of pride in his voice. The genin all looked at each other and nodded with the biggest smiles on their faces. They had done it. Years in the academy had all paid off. Today was the day. With that out of the way, I'll begin announcing teams. First up, with Hayate Gecko as sensei, we have Team 1 with, and on Iruka went down the list until he had finally reached the clan air groupings. He may have said that they all had the future in their hands, and he meant it, but he especially meant it to these kids. They were to be the future leaders of the founding clans of Konoha after all, and as a consequence would have a direct hand in the laws and policy making of this very village. Team 7 will consist of Yakumo Kurama. Yakumo grinned and crossed her fingers, hoping she got her best friend and crush on her team. Ino Yamanaka, the two girls high-fived with grins. They may be rivals for Naruto's heart, but that didn't mean they hated each other, far from it. Yakumo had lived a sheltered life and had never had any real friends. She of course eventually became friends with Naruto, but he was a guy and her crush. When she met Ino, it was different. She could talk to her about girl things that she couldn't very well talk to Naruto about. Ino was much the same. Sakura had never been a good girlfriend in the first place, so Yakumo was her first actual best girlfriend. And the final member of your team will be. Iruka paused intentionally. He had to milk this moment for all it was worth. Both the girls latched onto Naruto like he would disappear at any moment. Naruto Uzu was as far as he got before the two girls screamed in happiness that they had gotten their crush and pseudo-sensei on their team. They may be kunoichi now, but they were still preteen girls with a crush after all. Naruto merely sat there with his foxy grin on. He had worried that they wouldn't be placed on the same time, but maybe this was the Sandame trying to apologize to him. He knew that that was probably the case, but he also knew that the man may also have ulterior motives. Alright, you two. Let me finish. Yay. Now, as I was saying, your final team member will be Naruto Uzuma. I'm so stupid. The genin were surprised, as Iruka was never one to curse without good reason, and he was now also pounding his head on the desk. What the hell was he doing? Naruto narrowed his eyes at this. Unless our sensei is the Hokage himself, there is no way that Iruka would have reacted like that. There has to be something to this, but what was? Oh shit, the old man did he? Taking a break from making a spectacle of himself, he gave Naruto a pointed look and asked, "Did you know about this, Naruto?" "Know about what, Iruka-sensei?" asked a very suspicious blonde. "Your full name." At this, all the students turned to look at Naruto. He had a longer name. They had never paid much attention to him, and since there wasn't an Uzumaki clan compound, they had just assumed his parents were either civilians or forgettable ninja that had died when he was young or something. Naruto sighed before he replied, "Yes, since I was 8. My old sensei told me the whole story." Whoa, wait, Naruto had a sensei when he was young. That explained how he showed up and started doing as decently as he was, as well as his 2-year absence from the village. But what was this whole thing about his name? Guess the Hokage wanted it to be known finally, so do you mind? Inquired Iuka. If he told these kids, there was no doubt the news would spread like wildfire among the village. Knowing the villagers, they would either riot in denial, though not very likely, or turn Naruto into a damn celebrity. And he knew Naruto wasn't comfortable with either of those options. "Yay, sure. I can handle any backlash it may cause now. I have a feeling the Hokage is prepared as well if he's releasing it," sighed Naruto. This was gonna be a long day. "Okay, if you say so." The final member of Team 7 is Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze. It took most of the others to remember why that name was famous, but when it clicked, their jaws dropped. Naruto was the son of their Yondaime Hokage. Due to the shock, Kiba accidentally said what everyone else was thinking: "Holy shit, Naruto is the son of the Kiroi Senko, Yellow Flash." The only ones not shocked at this discovery were Yakumo and Ino. When Naruto had told them he would share his secrets, he damn well meant it. He had told them everything. The fox, his heritage, his sensei, why he met his sensei, all of it. Iruka coughed as a way to try and regain some semblance of order in the class. Team 7, your Junin sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. At this, Naruto was surprised. Why wasn't Kakashi teaching the Uchiha kid? He was the only one in the village who could possibly train the kid on how to use his Sharingan. Team 8 will be Shikamaru Nara, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inazaka. Your sensei will be Kurenai Uehi. There was no whoop or anything. After that bombshell, the kids had been stunned to silence. Taking advantage of the unusual drop in volume in the class, Iruka continued, Team 10 under Asuma Sarutobi will consist of Shino Aburame, Choji Akamichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. Grabbing his clipboard and some papers, Iruka said his final words to his now ex-students: "I'm proud of you guys. Remember, my door is always open to any of you. It was an honor teaching you kids. Be safe out there." With that, Iruka bowed and the kids bowed to him as a sign of respect to the man. And with that, Iruka left the room. Before the kids could begin pestering Naruto with questions, Hayate and Genma showed up to grab their teams. Not seconds later, Asuma and Kurenai showed up as well to take their teams. As soon as the room was cleared, Yakumo and Ino looked at Naruto with concerned eyes. "You sure you're gonna be able to handle it, Naruto? You remember what you told us might happen if the village ever found out, right?" questioned an oddly kind Ino. Yakumo was a girl of few words and simply wrapped her hands around his arm and laid her head on his shoulder. Had this been another time, Naruto's fellow blonde would have made a scene, but now was not the time. Naruto needed all the support he could get. With that in mind, she mirrored Yakumo. Sighing yet again, "Yeah, I'll be fine. As long as I don't start getting gray hairs from all this sighing I'm doing today, haha." Taking his arms out of the grasp of the girls and wrapping an arm around each of the girls' waists, he continued with a grin, "Besides, I got two beautiful and strong kunoichi by my side, right?" "Of course," spoke a blushing yet still pumped Yamanaka. "You bet, Naru," murmured the very comfortable genjutsu user. "Though I wonder where our sensei is," she continued. "Oh right. Almost forgot about that. Hey Inu. You can come out now." Naruto spoke, surprising the girls. Then they sensed it too. The chakra sitting at Iruka's desk. Turning, they saw a silver-haired man wearing the standard Junin uniform with his Hitai-8 covering his left eye, with his feet on the desk reading a certain little orange book. They both face-palmed at that. How the hell had they missed the guy? Guess they had been too worried about Naruto to notice. They made a note to not let that happen again. Had this been anywhere else, they very well could have been dead, and Naruto wouldn't always be there to save them. "I was originally gonna give you three a teamwork test, but seeing your current position, I believe that may be a moot point," drawled the man. "So you're the famous Kakashi Hatake, huh? Our village's own Sharingan no Kakashi," Yakumo calmly spoke. Naruto had drilled it into them that knowing your comrades was just as important, if not more so, than knowing your enemy. One of the Leaf's best Junin and son of Tsukumo Hatake, the Konoha no Shiro Kiba, White Fang of Kana. We got a pretty good sensei, didn't we, Ruto-kun? Spoke a grinning Ino. Kakashi was heavily surprised by the knowledge these two had on him. Most Chunin didn't even know who his father was and what he had done. Guess he was going to have to take this even more serious than what he had originally planned. Nicely done, girls, but you're forgetting one last little tidbit, spoke a grinning Naruto. Turning to Kakashi he began, he was also the student of my father in the second incarnation of Team 7 and only a few years later was a well-known Anbu captain and was in the running for taking the position of head of the Anbu Black Ops. Naruto walked down to meet Kakashi and stuck his hand out. He was also one of the few people who ever gave a shit about me. How've you been? Inu ni. Finished the now smiling Genin. Kakashi just chuckled and shook his head. He really was in for it with this team. Good to see you again too, Naruto ni. Okay, so now that we are an official team we need to get some things out of the way first. You three know each other better than anyone else in this whole village, but as your sensei I need to know you three just as well so we can actually work together efficiently. At this the three Genin nodded. He wasn't wrong. Just because they could work flawlessly together didn't mean anything if their Junin leader knew next to nothing about them and their styles. He had much more experience and was far stronger than them, well except Naruto. Even still he did have an edge over even Naruto. He had been raised and fought in the last great ninja war and had seen and done things they may never have too. So to start it off, let's share our likes, dislikes, hobbies, your dream for the future as well as general strength level as well as what you think your specialty is. Pointing at the sole person with a normal hair color on the team he said, "Why don't you go first, Shy One?" At that comment both Naruto and Ino chuckled. Yakumo. Shy. With a noticeable tick mark she began, "First off, I'm not shy, you damn scarecrow. I just prefer not to say much, got it? Anyways, my likes are Naru-kun, Ino, and T. My dislikes, when Ino tries to steal my Naru-kun from me, people who intrude on me when I'm trying to get some peace and quiet, arrogant jerks, and people who use others. My hobbies include painting, observing others, meditating, and sightseeing. My dream for the future is to have a happy family with Naru-kun. My general strength level, well, Naru-kun says I'm around low Junin level without my genjutsu. And my specialty is of course my genjutsu, though I'm fairly decent at Iryo jutsu as well as stealth. An assassin who can make her genutsus come to life. If there was ever more of a perfect assassin, she'd be it. Alright Blondie, you're up next. At this both Naruto and Ino looked at each other questioningly. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Hee oops. A female Blondie, you go next I guess. Deadpanning Ino started, dumbass. My likes are Ruto-kun, Yakumo, my family, and vegetable stew. My dislikes are people who purposely destroy nature, Yakumo when she tries to butt in on my Ruto time, and fangirls. Of course my hobbies are tending to my family garden, spending time with Ruto, and studying the mind arts. My dream for the future is to be a good clan head and have a bunch of little blonde children with Ruto-kun. My strength level, well, I'm not as good as Yakumo yet, but Ruto says I'm around high Chunin level. My specialty is of course my clan's jutsu, meaning I'm great for recon and interrogation. I'm also pretty good with poisons and the like. I'm actually pretty good at Iryo jutsu too. Boasted the proud Yamanaka. Can't say I blame the girl. A year ago she was a fangirl herself, and to have reached her skill level in that time gives her right to be proud. But still she's pretty much strictly a support member and sadly at this time our weakest link when compared to her teammates. However, Naruto is probably working on getting her up to snuff, so no worries yet. Well, now onto our last member. Your turn, short stack, the Junin said with a teasing eye smile. How the hell could an eye smile be teasing? The teen grew a tick mark. I grew, damn it. And he was right. When he was a kid he had been rather malnourished and so was pretty short for his age. But now, Naruto stood at a good 5 foot 5 inches, which was a good solid height for his age. With a huff Naruto spoke, my likes are Yakumo-chan, Ino-chan, my old sensei Vincent, ramen, and the color orange. My dislikes are arrogant child abusers, a certain Uchiha, and people who prejudge others. At the remark about a certain Uchiha, Kakashi grew curious. Uchiha. There are only 2 left in the world and Itachi never did anything to hurt the kid. In fact, Naruto loved Itachi. And as far as I know, Sasuke and Naruto could care less about the other. Who could it be? My hobbies include training, reading, researching, working on my own seals, and fighting people who give me a challenge. My strength level, without the help of my tenant, I'd say about Junin or Anbu level. I haven't really had a reason to use Kyuubi's chakra, but I can control up to 3 tails perfectly. At the 4th tail I can somewhat control it, but my bloodlust becomes hard for me to fight back. At 5, yay, let's hope none of you are around if I ever have to use 5 tails. My specialties are fuinjutsu, ninjutsu, and kenjutsu. I'm decent at all other ninja arts. Naruto finished like he was talking about the weather. Oh yay, I forgot that because of Kyuubi I'm an empath. It makes me a sensor of sorts. Holy shit, he's that strong at 14. And that's without the Kyuubi. This kid can probably give Jiraiya a run for his money. I might as well hand the team over to him. Guess Hokage-sama was right. I'm gonna have to get stronger if I wanna keep up with these kids. Clapping his hands together and doing an eye smile, the scarecrow said, well, I guess it's my turn. My likes, My dislikes, good question. My hobbies are R-rated, hee. My strength, well, you guys seem to know that pretty well. My specialty is ninjutsu and assassination, just you at that. Though I know my fair share of destructive jutsu as well. He looked at his team expecting them to be disappointed at what he had shared, but instead he found Naruto was eating ramen, and Ino and Yakumo were talking about clothes. Instantly Kakashi was in the corner of the rooftop, crouched over with a mini raincloud over him. You guys are so mean. Seeing that they weren't going to care anytime soon, he returned to normal, and with another eye smile Kakashi began speaking again. Well, I had originally planned on testing you guys, but again that's a moot point. Instead you have the day off and come tomorrow we will begin training. Our schedule will be Monday, Tuesday, intensive training. Wednesday through Friday will be group exercises as well as missions. And Saturday and Sunday will be time to relax. Meet at training ground 7 tomorrow morning at 6. Ya nay. And with that Kakashi shunshined away. So Ruto, tomorrow we start? Asked Ino. Yup, now that the council has no say in what we do and now that we have a Junin sensei to back us, the real training begins tomorrow. Naruto replied. Yakumo and Ino both sighed at this. Looks like it was back to boot camp, Naruto style. Chapter 7. It had been a month since Team 7 had been initiated as unofficial team of Konoha, and since then not much had changed with the village. Even the members of Team 7 hadn't changed all that much. Naruto still wore the same clothes he had been wearing since the academy, except now he usually wore his ragged cloak on top of that and left it unzipped, as well as he now carried a katana at his left hip. The hilt was deep crimson red and it had a black tassel that dangled from the pommel. Kakashi was still a pervert and lazy, but his fellow joinin could feel a change in his aura. It still exuded that same tone of laziness, but underneath that was a newfound well of power. Kakashi was strong. Everyone knew that, but it seemed like he had gained a drive to grow even stronger once more. Yakumo had done the most drastic change and had completely changed up her outfit. She now wore tight black shinobi pants taped at the ankle and black shinobi sandals. She wore a black tank top underneath a mesh top, and over that she wore a deep purple sweater whose sleeves went past her hands. Hidden in the sleeves were seals Naruto had drawn that held senbon, kunai, shuriken, and her paintbrushes. Those same weapons were covered in various poisons that Ino had actually made especially for her. Some of them kept her victims awake longer, knocked them out, paralyzed them, or straight up killed them on the spot. She had taken to covering her mouth with her sleeves, yes, just like a certain Urankar from Bleach when talking. Ino had stayed pretty much the same, except she now carried 2 scrolls stacked on top of each other at the small of her back. One scroll contained various types of poisons meant for enemies. The one underneath that one carried assorted medical supplies should anybody need her assistance. At first the training had started off rather bumpy as the 3 genin were trying to get comfortable with Kakashi and vice versa. Once that bump had been passed, training went off without a hitch. Not even the Hokage knew exactly how strong the team was, as all Kakashi was willing to share with him was that the team works seamlessly together as a unit and each of us has grown in some way. This of course bothered the man to no end, as the one of the reasons he had wanted Kakashi to be their sensei was to have an insider of sorts. He highly doubted that they were thinking of anything close to betraying the village, but still he wasn't comfortable not knowing how strong his soldiers were. At current time we find our Hokage along with the ninja council dealing with said team. So as I understand Junin Hitaki, you wish for permission to leave the village for 2 months on a training trip. What exactly would warrant this? The ninja council members were just as curious. There had never been a request such as this from a genin team, let alone such a new genin team. Chunins and Junins. Sure, but fresh out of the academy genin. Unheard of. If I may, Hokage-sama. Interjected the team's powerhouse. It still hurt the man deeply to hear a teen he had once bottle-fed and cared for refer to him in such a way, but he hid it well. He had no one to blame for it but himself. You made genin. He motioned. Well sir, the reason we feel it would benefit us was as far as Naruto got before he was interrupted by the chamber doors being slammed open by the members of the civilian council. All those present narrowed their eyes at this. What right did they have to interrupt this? What is the meaning of this, Hokage? Holding a meeting without us? Shouted one indescript member of the council. Shouts of agreement echoed throughout the small gathering of civilians. Sarutobi's old teammates and rival for the hat made their way to the forefront of the crowd as well. Indeed, Hiruzen. What are you doing performing such things behind our ba? Enough! Shouted Hiruzen, flaring his chakra as well as his ki, killing intent, forcing many to their knees. Coming to a standing position, he continued, I have watched you all run my sensei's village to the ground, all while disrespecting me and my position, and I've had enough of it. You have all forgotten that this is no democracy. This is a shinobi village and you are all civilians. Meaning you have absolutely no say in how I command my soldiers. Pointing at Kaharu, Homura, and Danzo, he continued his rant, and you three. You seem to have forgotten your place as well. You do not tell me what to do. You are my advisors, meaning you advise me and nothing more. I have final say when it comes to all matters of this village, you do not. Letting loose a vast amount of chakra causing even some of the clan heads to sweat, he spoke, do I make myself clear, civilians? Strained murmurs of, yes Hokage-sama, rang through the crowd. Sarutobi took his seat once more and dispersed his chakra, letting the civilians stand once more. Good. I hope I don't have to do this again. Anbu, escort these people out. It was with grumbles that the room was finally cleared of the civilians. Motioning with his hands like nothing had happened, he intoned, you were saying Genin Namikaze. Guess I had an impact on the old man that night. Glad you're coming back, thought a smirking Naruto. Coughing, he spoke with a straight face, yes, well as it stands my team and myself have need of more space to practice both our own individual techniques as well group ones that would cause quite a bit of collateral damage to the village and any training ground in the village. And what of the Forest of Death? Or even the training fields behind the Hokage monument? Would they not meet your needs? Inquired the ever-stoic Hyuga head. Or even the Anbu training grounds? Those are made to handle such things, continued the feral Sum Inazaka. If I may be blunt, council and Hokage? Questioned Naruto. At their approval, he bluntly stated, normally yes, but the use of my furry tenant is included in some of these as well as Yakumo's own bloodline. We also cannot get real-world experience here in the village, and being honest, we knew you would never permit our group to even attempt higher-ranking missions, so we figured that if we went out to train we would encounter people to test us. Kids damn smart, was the collective thought of among the ninja council. Hokage-sama, if I may, spoke a surprisingly alert Nara Shikaku. After getting the okay to canteen from his commander, he rose from his seat and with a sigh began to speak. I think this may prove to be quite the boon for us as a village in quite a few ways. Not only will we have possibly one of our strongest Junins accompany possibly our strongest Genin squad outside, they could, for the lack of a better term, serve as advertisements to both our allies as well as our enemies. Shikaku saw that he had piqued the interest of all those present. He continued with another sigh, by sending out these four they would obviously encounter both our allies as well as enemies. Of course our enemies may see this as an opportunity to pick one of our teams off, but when they are deftly handled by a mere Genin squad, well, you can imagine the ensuing rumors. Of course we all know that this particular team is of course far from average, but those that would serve as messengers of this news don't have to. His speech was met with the whole room smirking at the deviousness of it all. Hey, you can't blame them. These are people trained to use any tactic to win the battle, or in this case stop a battle from even happening. It was dirty, underhanded, and secretive, or in other words a perfect plan for a village of trained assassins. Only minutes later Team 7 was walking out of the Hokage Tower with a scroll signed by every member of the Ninja Council as well as the Hokage himself, allowing them almost Sanin travel rights. It was weeks later we find Team 7 sitting around a campfire after having returned from gaining the bounty of yet another overly cocky missing nin. This had been taken care of by Ino personally. He had said something about her being a bimbo and the rest of the team knew to let her handle it. It was only by sheer luck that they had been able to save the head from being melted by a corrosive acid the Yamanaka had injected into the man, via a rather uncomfortable place that things should not be injected into. Within the span of a few weeks the team had managed to grow even more as a team thanks to them not having to worry about endangering any innocents. The only innocents that suffered were the poor innocent trees they slaughtered on a regular basis. Of course they had been able to work on individual skills some, but the whole purpose of this trip was to get even more comfortable with each other and be able to more easily be able to not only coordinate their individual attacks but also their team attacks. Those same team attacks ranged from small jutsu use and taijutsu combinations to joint jutsu combinations on a massive scale. As individuals they were strong and fearsome, especially Naruto and Kakashi, but as a team they were near undefeatable. They had finally found out where Naruto stood without the help of his tenant, and he and Kakashi were currently tied for wins and losses in their spars. Said spars looked more like battles to the death that had actually given Ino quite a bit of valuable experience in healing various burns, cuts, gashes, broken bones, and several otherwise life-threatening wounds. Naruto of course needed no help in that department. It was a topic that had actually piqued Naruto's interest. Whenever he had used even the smallest amounts of Kyuubi's chakra in the past he always felt the telltale signs of said chakra beast's bloodlust and anger, but when he was healed he felt none of that. With that in mind he had elected to use today's solo training time to get some questions he had answered. Entering a meditative state he soon found himself in the sewer that was his mind. It had become quite clean in recent years due to his new outlook in life and all, but no matter how good life was going for him it remained a sewer still. The waters had lowered until they merely looked like a puddle, the walls looked much cleaner, and the pipes that represented his chakra pathways shined a bright bronze. The young Uzumaki followed the pipes and the huge source of power to the open chamber where the strongest of the Biju resided. Of course, being a massive construct of chakra didn't take away from the fact that the Kyuubi was still a kitsune, which is why our hero currently finds the snoozing form of the fox. Naruto now had a dilemma on his hands. He had to find a way to wake up the massive fox without ticking it off. If he pissed it off then he would get zero answers and be booted from his own damn mind. For as old as the fox was it still acted like a teenager. Either that or the fox was affected by the person it was being contained in. Naruto paced back and forth with his hands folded behind him trying to think of a good way to pleasantly wake up the sleeping furball, without getting Maiku'd out. After 5 minutes of pacing Naruto snapped his fingers. We're talking about a giant fox here. What better way to wake up a giant fox than with a giant rabbit? Using the fact that this was his mind to his advantage, the blonde imagined a fluffy white bunny, except on a much larger scale. And with a poof said image took physical, mental, it took form. The thing was almost as big as him. He sent it into the cage and the next thing he knew was he had giant bunny blood splattering all over him, gross. Looking up he saw the Biju grinning at him as it cleaned the blood from its fur. Well my host, that was a good little treat. Lowering itself onto its haunches and resting its head on its front paws it looked at its jailer with a bored look. Now I assume you woke me for some reason or other. I may be in a decent mood but I would much like to get back to my nap, so if you would please hurry. Naruto nodded. Right, well I just got a couple of questions you may have the answers to. Noticing the fox looked just the slightest bit more interested he continued, well I know that because I have you stuck in me my empath sense has become something akin to radar. I was just wondering if that would be passed down along with the Uzumaki vitality and all that. Well yes, it would be possible, it would require some work on both our parts. You are correct, I am the reason the sense was heightened to unseen levels, and it's that very reason that should you mate with a female normally the offspring would not be born with the power. I would have to pump some of my own yoki into your sperm, infusing them with said yoki to make it possible. The blonde teen nodded at that. It made sense. Had he not had the Kyuubi he wouldn't have the power in the first place. The only thing is that the child will not have it anywhere close to your level. Because you have my chakra constantly being siphoned into your body, the sense has become dependent on it. It's using my yoki as a source of energy. Since the child will not have the yoki constantly flowing through its pathways, the sense will not have enough energy to work to its full potential. Lectured the kitsune. Yay, that does make sense. Alright, thanks. My other question is about my healing factor. I know we Uzumaki are extremely durable and I've become even more so thanks to you, but whenever my healing factor kicks in I know it's not your yoki that's doing it. Why is my healing factor so advanced? The fox paused to stretch before it continued. Well, your healing prowess is thanks to a lot of different factors. Part of it is your Uzumaki blood, another part is having me, another part is this damn seal here, and the last part is your father's blood. At this Naruto was surprised. His father's blood. The guy was an orphan and had never been able to find out who his parents were. What was in his blood to be able to contribute to his ungodly healing factor? And how the hell did the fox know who they were? Don't worry, I'll get to that, but first my part in it. You see, the seal you have on you may be vastly different from that of your mother and your ancestor Mito, but they also serve the same basic principle, binding me to them damn near down to the soul. Because of this I have absorbed some qualities from them and vice versa. Your seal is much different in that you are allowed access to much more of my power, but in exchange we are quite literally bonded at the soul. This has allowed for some of my own qualities to seep into you. So my own greatness combined with the vitality of two very powerful Uzumaki women, and you have become close to being immortal. Normally the only way that you would possibly be able to die would be via decapitation or someone ripping out your beating heart. Anything short of that and you'll be coming back. You'd also be victim to the ravages of time, eventually. Probably not until you hit your hundreds or so, but you'd still fall victim to time. It looked like the Kyuubi had finally finished, but with a pointed look Naruto shut his mouth. Now one of the most interesting things that contributes to your healing is your father's blood. How much of the inner workings do you know about your father's famed Harishin? Although he hadn't been able to fully master the technique yet, he had of course studied the notes on it. The thing was a fuinjutsu masterpiece almost on par with the one on his stomach. Well, I know that the basic principle of it is that it bends the fabric of space and time around two certain points, the seal marker and the user. Using chakra, the user is able to make a tunnel of sorts between the 2 points, making travel in between the points instantaneous. It's one of a small handful of known Jikuken time-space jutsu. Yes, and the other Jikuken techniques are not nearly as impressive. Do you realize what you have just said? Your father is bending the very fabric of the universe to his whim with naught but his chakra. If he had lived to be as old as the monkey, I have no doubt he would have been able to use the technique without the marker. But back on topic. What your father is doing is something not even most of us Biju are able to do. I myself only have a very rudimentary ability to do something similar, and I'm thousands of years old. Spoke the now clearly awake kitsune. It may have at one point been angry at the man, but even it had to respect someone who was able to redirect a Bijudama-tailed beast ball using a highly advanced Jikuken jutsu. As he finally came to realize what the technique truly was, Naruto's jaw dropped. His father was literally playing kami. The seals on the marker were honestly not all that complex. He had been able to understand a chunk of them after a couple of months and all of them after 3 years. What the hell else was his father doing that could possibly make such a thing possible? It's not what your father was doing, but more like what his chakra was doing. At hearing the booming voice, the teen looked questioningly at the massive Kitsu. What does his chakra have to do with this? Every living thing on this planet has an affinity. Everything from you ninja down to the smallest insect has an affinity to one or more of the elements. Some fall into the main 5 of fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning. Others, however, fall into sub-elements such as ice, magma, metal, and even light and dark themselves. Your father was from a very unique clan thought to have died out during the clan wars. That clan was responsible for the handful of known Jikuken techniques. The Namikaze clan was a clan feared by many for their jutsu and their affinity to Jikuken. Others looked at them as demons, as they believed only the gods should be able to mess with time and space. Eventually the clan grew too full of themselves and attempted to time travel and plane jump. They failed, and the backlash caused by that failure cost them more than half of their numbers. The other clans heard of their weakened state and pounced. Soon the clan had been erased from the annals of history for fear that others would attempt to recreate their techniques. Only someone the age of your Shadaime would have any kind of knowledge on that clan. Naruto sat there awestruck. He was not from just one clan that had been wiped out due to fear of their strength, but 2. But what made them so special? I mean, what gave them their affinity to Jikuken? I myself do not know of their origins, as they had been around when the Rakudo Sennin was alive. However, I do know that their chakra had special properties. Much like Uzumaki chakra grants the user vitality and endurance, Namikaze gifts them with dense and powerful chakra. Their chakra was so thick and strong they could bend the universe as they pleased. It's that very chakra that allowed your father to invent the technique that gave him his name, and it's that very chakra that now runs through your veins. But how does that affect my healing? The Namikaze clan were like the Uzumaki in that because of the properties of their chakra and blood they were harder to kill than the average human. With the Namikaze, their cells reproduced so rapidly and for so long that they had become near invulnerable to the destruction of time. Your mother looked to be in her 20s, well into her 30s, and your father was much the same. You'll probably look 20, well into your 60s. You, my vessel, are the closest to being immortal any ninja has ever gotten. Naruto sat on his stool, shocked to speak. He prided himself on being able to control his emotions and not look, well, like a fool, but this was just one of those moments. How could he not be shocked? At the age of 14 he was closer than anybody in the elemental nations to damn well being a kami. Everything about him was near perfection. He was bred to be great. Just. Naruto sat there gaping like a fish. The kitsune's sweat dropped. Maybe it had said too much in one sitting. Coughing into its pause, it continued, yes, well, that may well be a very intelligent response in the making. You would do well to remember who is after you and who else would come for you if they knew what you do. You may have the potential to even equal me, but without the training to use any of it properly, that's all it will be, potential. As it stands, you are indeed strong, but nowhere near the level of those who would see you dead or under a microscope. Still too shocked by all of it, Naruto merely nodded with his mouth still wide open. The sweat drop the kitsune had returned much larger this time. I'll leave you to cope then. And with that, Naruto was ejected from his mind. A week later we find our protagonist on his own meditating. After learning about everything from his tenant, he had began to push his own training to even greater heights. To do so, he had apologized to Ino and Yakumo for having to give them to Kakashi to continue their training, but they had understood. It actually gave them even more incentive to grow stronger. If they planned to help their blonde crush with the enemies and situations he would find himself in, then they would need to be strong as they could be. Kakashi had also understood and had even vowed that he would be there too. No matter what, they were his students and he would help them any way he could. At the current moment, the teen was meditating to get a feel for the different chakras coursing through his body. Of course, since he had been born with them and they had thusly grown into him, the different chakras had blended into one perfect, balanced source. He could still, however, feel the different qualities his chakra had. It was like Namikaze, Uzumaki, and Kyuubi's Yoki were rivers that all flowed into the lake that was his chakra. To begin to truly use the powers of each, he had to be able to differentiate between them all. Using Namikaze chakra to do an Uzumaki technique may end less than pleasantly for him. It struck him as odd that chakra had a feel to it, an emotion of sorts. Maybe he was the only one able to sense it due to his empath powers, but nonetheless it was there. Maybe it had something to do with the chakra itself. Maybe it was like blood in that it carried parts of its originator, his ancestor. Bah, I'm getting off track here. Okay, so let me see. Naruto thought as he searched through his chakra pool. Anger, malevolence, power, and superiority. That's definitely the fuzzball's Yoki. Life, vitality, and energy. That's my Uzumaki chakra. Now where was as far as his thought process went before he felt it. Holy. This, feeling, strength, dominance, force, what is this? Is this how Namikaze chakra feels? It's, fuck, screamed the blonde as he squeezed his eyes and held his head. Might controls everything. Without it you can't protect anything, not even yourself. Echoed a rumbling voice in his head. Who the fuck are you? Get out of my head. Screamed the blonde in agonizing pain. Who are you? There is room only for one in this kit's mind, and I am it. Leave here, no. Foolish kitsune. You hold no power over me. Be silent. Inside the cage we see the great Kyuubi ramming the gates of its cage in an effort to help its vessel. With a mighty roar the kitsune unleashes 5 tails of its power, letting it flow into every crack and crevice of its prison. Kit, was the last thing heard from the mightiest of the Biju. Who are you and what do you want? yelled the panicking teen. He could no longer hear let alone feel the Kyuubi's presence. Calm yourself, child. I am not going to harm you or that beast. As for who I am your ancestor. I am Yamato Namikaze. Now where could those flowers be? They shouldn't be this hard to find here, spoke a beautiful teen. She had a porcelain face complemented by the dark hair that framed her face. She looked to be about 16 and had the curves to prove it. Those said curves were somewhat hidden by the pink kimono she wore. She carried a small wicker basket on her right arm as she leisurely strolled through the forest. Now I could have sworn I saw some of the flowers I need when we walked through this path. Where could, she stopped her train of thought abruptly as she saw the destruction of the forest. Trees were either burned, sliced clean, or some combination of the two. The ground was no better as it was cratered as if it hit by a small meteor shower. Venturing further into the destruction she saw who she thought to be the culprit in a meditative pose. It was a teen around her age with wild blonde hair that fell around his head in gentle spikes. The teen was currently shirtless, showing her what kind of training he did, and boy was she blushing. On his lap sat a beautifully crafted katana with a crimson red hilt and a length of black cloth hanging from the pommel. You know it's kinda rude to stare at someone shirtless, miss, spoke the teen. She eeped, before she chuckled in attempt to regain some composure. Yes, well, I was merely, admiring your sword, and immediately her mind shot to the gutter. If he's that toned up there, I wonder if, no bad Haku, I mean, well, what happened here? She nervously asked. Chuckling, the blonde opened his eyes to reveal the most beautiful sapphire blue eyes she had ever seen. He rose from his position on the floor to show that he was a couple inches taller than her. He grabbed his ragged black cloak from a hanging tree branch and threw it on, leaving it unzipped. He walked up to her carrying his blade in his left hand lazily. Each step he took closer to her, her blush grew darker. An arm's distance away he lifted his hand to offer a handshake. My name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, spoke the blonde Adonis, with his foxy grin plastered on his face. Slipping her hand in his, she nervously chuckled and said, Haku. Haku Momoichi. Chapter 8. So what are you doing out in this part of the forests of Hinokuni? Inquired our blonde protagonist from his sitting position. He of course had an inkling of what she was doing here, but hey, he could be wrong. Oh. The dark-haired teen frantically shot to her feet and began to gather her things. I'm actually here looking for a specific type of herb. What kind of herb? I might be able to help. Volunteered our hero. Before anything more could be said, both individuals could feel a spike of chakra, which meant a battle. Haku narrowed her eyes as she could see the hints that the Kurigakur no Jutsu, hidden mist, had been used, and she knew only one person in this area who used that technique in battle. Naruto had of course noticed much before Haku had, but kept it from showing on his face. He knew the name Momoichi and the person causing the chakra spike. One Zabuza Momoichi, the demon of the bloody mist and former member of the Kirin no Shinobigatana Shichininshu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. He knew Zabuza was a powerful enemy, and a couple months ago Kakashi would have been able to go toe-to-toe with the guy with some difficulty. But that was not the Kakashi the so-called demon was fighting. This Kakashi was the Junin who was trained by the Kuroi Senku of Konoha. The same man who knew over 1,000 jutsu and had created 2 jutsu unique to him. Zabuza frankly stood no chance. I apologize Naruto-kun, but I must be going now, and with that the ice user was gone. She forgot her basket. Guess I should return it to her. Whistling a jaunty tune of some sort, Naruto leisurely made his way to where he knew the fight was taking place. The sounds of steel clashing against steel echoed through what was once a thick forest, now being a man-made clearing. Come on Zabuza. Where is that famous demon of the mist at? Spoke a smirking Kakashi. Geez, I really gotta stop letting those 3 rub off on me. I was never this battle happy, but I do admit it is pretty fun. The shirtless swordsman merely grunted in response. I know that he was feared for a reason, but this is ridiculous. He's fighting back my attacks using only kunai. Yakumo and Ino sat atop a tree branch not too far away enjoying the show. Individually Zabuza would be a problem, but together Yakumo and Ino were confident enough to be able to handle him. Besides, Kakashi was handling things well enough, and they could feel Naruto making his way over. Hey Ino, you want her or should I? Spoke a smirking Yakumo. Oh, well, I got the last one, so you can go ahead. spoke a grinning blonde. Geez, Naruto had really done a number on them. Haku came blazing into the clearing intent on helping her master. Preparing some senbon, she was about to throw them to at least throw Kakashi off. Zabu was all she could get out before she received a sandal to her stomach. She was thrown clear into a tree with enough force to splinter it. Giggling from behind her sleeve, the genjutsu user mocked, "Nah. My sensei is enjoying the fight and a 2-on-1 fight is hardly fair, so just sit there and watch, okay?" She turned to leave the girl but would have been skewered by senbon had she not vanished. Haku's eyes widened. Where did she? You know, I get that we're ninja and all, but really. When my back is turned. Haku would have moved if she didn't feel the cold steel of a sharpened kunai at her throat. The dark-haired ice user witnessed Zabuza get thrown clear across the forest via Kakashi's use of a Doden jutsu from her downed position. With a steely look in her, she prepared herself for what she was going to do. I must help Zabuza-sama at any cost. She formed the one-handed seals for her signature jutsu. As she formed the last of the seals, she threw her head back against Yakumo's abdomen, allowing her enough room to escape. With a burst of chakra, she called out, "Haijutsu, Makio Hyosho." Secret art. Demonic ice mirrors. A dome of said mirrors formed around the brunette teen, encasing her in the icy trap. I apologize for having to use this technique on you, but I must help my master, said the solemn Haku. She hated to use this technique because it meant she was going for the killing blow and she would rather not have to kill. Killing never sat well with her. As she prepared to end the fight as quick as possible, she expected to see some fear in the girl, but all she saw was her form shaking. She must be crying cause she doesn't want to die. I am sorry, but I must help Zabuza-sama. With that last thought, Haku launched the senbon and watched as the young girl was turned into a pincushion. Haku looked down in shame. Ah, you think you killed me? Haku snapped up to see the reflections of herself begin to morph into the form of the brunette. What? How? Well, you see, you've made your own grave with this technique. You showed your full hand to finish a battle you thought would be easy without knowing the cards your enemy held. Haku tried to escape the mirror but found she was stuck inside the mirror itself. She's turned my own technique on me. How? Allow me to introduce myself, Haku heard from behind her. Turning, she found the girl she thought she had killed standing in a field of freshly fallen snow. My name is Yakumo. Yakumo Kurama. And it was at that moment Haku began sweating. She may not have been from Konoha, but the Kurama family was known throughout the nations for being able to make their genjutsu become reality. Now I would rather not have to do this, but you've left me no choice. Goodbye, Miss Ice User. Haku began to panic as she saw things rising from the snow. They looked like frozen corpses that had been released from hell itself. She closed her eyes and prepared for the inevitable. I'm sorry, Zabuza-sama, I have failed you. She was ready to accept her fate before she heard the sound of something smacking against flesh and an even louder yelp of pain. Opening her eyes, she saw the blonde she had met in the forest and the brunette who was going to murder her with her own technique on the floor, holding her rear in pain. All she could do was sweat drop at the ridiculousness of the situation. She had been ready to die, but she had been saved, because the girl who was going to kill her had been spanked. Now Yakumo, normally I would congratulate you, but considering I would much like to keep our lovely Yuki Onna, Snow Woman, here alive and unharmed, well, you see what happened. After getting her blush under control, she asked, Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? Inquired the very curious ice user. Hey, wait a minute, Naruto-kun. Where do you think, was all Yakumo could get out before she was smacked on her still tender rear. Naru-kun. What was that for? Pouted the genjutsu user. Play nice, Yakumo, and I'll tell you later. Admonished the blonde. Turning to Haku, he answered, here to save you, of course. Now let's see what we can do about your father, nay. Haku's eyes widened at being reminded about Zabuza and his current position. Zabu, was all she got put before she was flicked on the nose. Scrunching up her face at the flick, she looked at Naruto, pouting. Why is no one letting me finish my sentences today? Cause we can, grinned the cheeky blonde. Now let's get out of here. And with a snap of the finger, the frozen wasteland was gone, to be replaced by Zabuza rocketing across the field and Kakashi hot on his tail, Raikiri, lightning edge, in hand. Naruto seemingly phased out of existence only to appear before Kakashi, catching his wrist before he could deliver the finishing blow. Kakashi merely looked up, giving his student a questioning gaze. Potential allies, was all the Jinchuriki said, and Kakashi just nodded his head. It made sense. Zabuza and his apprentice would be a good addition to the village. Zabuza looked up at the kid who had saved him oddly. Who the hell was he and why did he seem familiar? I swear I've seen that blade before. And the hair. Who is this kid? Zabuza would have continued his thoughts had Haku not rushed over to him. He noticed the girl seemed rather distraught over something. Hey, why you looking all depressed, Haku? Grunted the swordsman. Even on his last legs he was still a heart, it seemed. Sniffling, she explained, I was worried I would lose you. I thought I had failed, only to be interrupted by Zabuza musing her hair. Hey, you did good. It's my fault we ended up in this situation. I thought they were here for the bounty on my head or something like that. At hearing that, Kakashi and his team attempted to look as innocent as possible. Well, thanks to Naruto-kun. Hey, whoa there, kun. Teased Zabuza. Haku merely gained a tick mark. Why is no one letting me finish my sentences? At that, everyone there laughed at the poor girl's expense. After everyone had managed to regain their breath, Naruto walked up to the pair. Well, I actually have a question for you two. How would you like to stop having to constantly look behind your backs? Questioned the blonde Uzumaki. Zabuza wearily looked at the teen. Hold on, what are you saying? Well, I have some pull with the Hokage, and I'm sure if I vouched for you two you would have no problem becoming a part of Konoha's forces. My family name would also help with the villagers and all as well. Naruto casually stated. He wasn't wrong about any of it. Zabuza merely grunted before he slowly rose to a standing position using his giant blade as a crutch. That reminds me. You and that blade you have there look really familiar to me. What's your name, kid? The Kyuubi container stuck his hand out. Name's Naruto, Naruto Uzu. With a steely glint in his eyes he grabbed Zabuza and Haku in a show of speed and brought them to where his teammates were. His reason for this? A pack of those nasty creatures he had seen years ago when he first started training. This time though they looked to be out for blood. What the air those? Asked his fellow blonde, a sentiment shared by all present. I don't know, but I need you all to stay here. None of you are in good enough shape to even harm these things. With a blink, Naruto was only inches from the thing's blade drawn. However, to his surprise, his blade was blocked way too easily for his comfort. In a matter of a second he was surrounded and about to become pulp, with all the creatures using their spiked limbs as deadly blunt weapons. With a backflip he was on top of the shoulders of one of them before they could get to him. Brandishing his blade once more he attempted to rid it of its head. However, he was smashed in the side by another of the creatures, sending him flying into several trees with the clear sound of bone breaking as he impacted. The others were having a hard enough time following all of this as the battle was happening at speeds way beyond their level. Even Kakashi's Sharingan was having trouble keeping up. As soon as they saw and heard Naruto get hit and get sent clear into the trees, they panicked, Yakumo, Ino, and Haku especially. They were about ready to jump in and help in any way they could before they saw Naruto struggle to rise to his feet. Spitting out a wad of blood he grunted, "No. They're not here for you. They're here for me. I can handle this. But why are they here for me? They were never this strong, and if I got far enough away before they would leave me be. Why are these ones so intent on killing me? They know who you are. They smell it on you," intoned the voice of his ancestor. Quickly bringing up his katana to block an incoming strike and ducking another, he tried to attack once more only to have to weave through several more spiked limbs. He quickly jumped away from the pack to give himself room to breathe. Fuck, this is getting ridiculous. These creatures will not rest until you are dead. Why me? And why now? They've never been this bloodthirsty before. Again Naruto found himself dodging and weaving his way through a mob of flying limbs intent on smashing his head in. Right now is not the time to explain, but I will say this: they sense the Namikaze blood in you and they will stop at nothing to see it gone from this world. Enough of making a fool of yourself. Dispose of these beasts. Yay, I got it. Time to get serious. With a roar Naruto unleashed some of his chakra, allowing it to coalesce around him. This was not a separation of his different sources but his true chakra, and it blazed a royal shade of purple. His eyes narrowed and went from sapphire jewels of mirth to frozen chips of ice. This is what he had dubbed his battle mode. All traces of emotion were dead to him in this state of mind, and his only goals were to defeat whoever stood in his way at any cost and protect those close to him. His companions were all shocked at the amount of energy he was putting out. Kakashi noticed the change in his demeanor and posture as well as the feel of his chakra. Yakumo and Ino noticed as well. Normally Naruto's chakra gave off the feel of warmth and safety, but now those feelings were buried underneath a well of dominance and authority. If they were being truthful, it was kind of hot. Haku and Zabuza had only known the blonde for a short time and were shocked beyond belief at what this teen was doing. To be that strong at his age was almost unheard of. Picking their jaws up off the floor, Haku was only barely able to catch the scabbard of Naruto's okatana. "You asked for my name, right, Zabuza?" Looking up, they saw Naruto staring at the oncoming pack of creatures, twirling his okatana by the tassel on its pommel. "My name is Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. And this was my mother, Kushina Uzumaki's sword." All Zabuza could do was gape. He was the child of the Konoha no Kiroi Senko Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, the Konoha no aka Sheet Red Death of Konoha. As soon as the creatures were in range, Naruto tossed the blade like a spear with enough force to pierce straight through the thick hide of one of the beasts. Within a flash, Naruto was once more holding his blade in the midst of the pack and was unleashing an innumerable amount of slashes all around him, but he knew it was far from over. The creatures had extremely thick hide and some minor healing factor. They were also extremely hard to put down. Hell, the one who had been pierced by his blade was still going strong. With that in mind, Naruto sent Futon Chakra through the blade and calmly spoke, "Futon, Shinkuken, vacuum sword." Naruto's allies' field of vision was cut short as a dome of pure wind-natured chakra entrapped the area occupied by the creatures and Naruto. "Wait, that looks more like your Hyuga clan's Hakusho Kaden, heavenly spin." Zabuza grunted out. "No, it looks like that because Naruto has created so many slashes with Shinkuken in such a short amount of time, they have created that dome," spoke a flabbergasted Kakashi. He knew Naruto was good and he had the scars to prove that, but what had he been doing the past couple of days on his own to get this good? Again Zabuza's jaw met the floor. He had seen some of the greatest sword wielders in his day, hell, he was one of the best, but this was incredible. They were cut short as the dome finally collapsed, revealing 4 of the 8 creatures done for. There was no way they were getting back up with those kinds of wounds. Again they were shocked when said creatures did just that. Naruto just scoffed. "You guys just don't know when to stop, huh? Fine, let's see how well you handle this." Nay. The only response he got was the watery sounding roar, screech of the creatures as they charged at him once more, trying to end his life. Using some of his Namikaze chakra, he performed the signature move of his ancestor, Yamato, Judgment Cut. All the others could see were purplish spheres appearing around the pack and then the beasts exploding due to the innumerable amount of slashes. To their and Naruto's own surprise, the creatures looked like they had been sneezed on and not just slashed a million times in the span of a second. They are immune to the ravages of time, which means any Jikuken technique is completely useless against them. Could have told me that earlier. But would ever guess we're doing this my way then. Sliding his sword into the ground, he proceeded to go through a sequence of hand seals before calling out, "Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu, fire style." Phoenix Sage Fire, launching volley of small fireballs towards the charging group of creatures. He quickly grabbed his sword and channeled his Futon Chakra through it again. Futon, Judgment Cut. This time spheres of a greenish color appeared around the balls of fire, and due to the slashes being wind-natured, the fireballs grew much larger and flew with more intensity. They impacted with the creatures, kicking up dust and flames. The blonde was far from done though. He flashed to the other side of where the beasts just were and going through another sequence of seals slammed his hands on the ground. Doden, Yomi Numa no Jutsu, Earth Release. Swamp of the Underworld, creating a swamp trapping the pack. Amazingly, they seemed to still be able to go, although looking even worse than before with limbs missing and parts literally melting off at the bone. Quickly the Kyuubi container channeled Raiden Chakra through his blade and slammed it into the chakra swamp, calling out, "Raiden, Jaibashi, Lightning Release, Electromagnetic Murder." With the different minerals in the earth as well as the small amounts of water acting as conductors, Naruto was able to send mass amounts of the lightning nature through each and every one of the horrid-looking creatures. Due to how blinding the attack was, nobody knew if the creatures were being hurt by all this or not. Feeling that he had handled it well enough, Naruto stopped the flow of chakra and flicked the mud off his blade. Looking out over the destruction he had just caused, all that could be seen in the mud pit was some charred limbs and nothing else. With a sigh, Naruto relaxed his posture only to feel Ino hook her arms around his neck and Yakumo snuggle up to his front. So it looks like your training went well. Smirked his fellow blonde. Haha, yay, you could say that. Big improvement with my kenjutsu too, chuckled our protagonist. Yay, I could see that, kiddo. Your mom would definitely be proud of you and how you're using her blade, I smiled. The team's scarecrow. Setting Ino down and slipping his arm out of Yakumo's grasp, much to their ire, he walked up to an injured Zabuza and blushing Haku. He smiled at Haku and held his hand out. She was deeply confused at what he was asking her for until she heard Zabuza laugh at her and point at what she currently held clutched to her chest. Realizing that he probably wanted his scabbard back, she handed it over to him, giggling embarrassedly. Naruto just chuckled, shaking his head at her, and sheathed his sword once again, loosely carrying it in his left hand. Kakashi walked up to his student and adoptive little brother and placed a strong hand on his shoulder. So wanna explain what those things were and how you exactly got that strong and fast? Yay, sure, but it's a long story, so let's move near the river and get comfortable cause it's a pretty long story. At that the group agreed. They needed the rest. It looked like Haku and Zabuza were going to leave until they were stopped by Naruto. And where do you think you guys are going? Haku was about to speak up, but yet again she was interrupted, this time before she could even make a sound. Didn't I tell you two that you're coming to Konoha to join us? Zabuza gave a hearty laugh at that and just shook his head. You're something else, you know that, kid. Should have met my parents, retorted the smiling blonde. Ino here will patch you up once we get to a good spot, alright. Zabuza just chuckled again and nodded. After taking a leisurely walk with Kakashi helping Zabuza walk in his injured state, the group finally reached their destination. Setting Zabuza down on a patch of grass, Ino got to work on fixing Zabuza as best she could, with Haku also looking at what she was doing. She only knew some very rudimentary skills when it came to Iryo Jutsu, so witnessing someone who actually knew more than her would be a great opportunity. The others took up spots on rocks or leaning against said rocks. Naruto took a spot on a good-sized boulder and crossed his feet into the lotus position. Everyone present gave him a pointed look, and with a sigh Naruto shared with them what all had happened. His training with the help of his ancestor, the Kyuubi, becoming more active with their conversations, as well as his training with its powers, etc. Learning about the Kyuubi had been shocking to Haku, but Zabuza knew all about how shinobi villages worked. He had lived long enough to see how most Jinchuriki were treated, and it wasn't pleasant. Haku had no such experience and resolved to find out more about the blonde. Ino and Yakumo of course saw the looks Haku was giving their crush, and all they could do was sigh and face palm. Naruto was just too good of a guy sometimes. So what are we going to do about our two passengers here? We aren't due to return back to the village for another 2 weeks, so? Kakashi asked. As far as he was concerned, this decision fell to Naruto. He had made the call on all this, so he would leave it up to him. He knew Naruto wasn't stupid and he trusted his decision. It had been Naruto who had gotten them to this point. Well, I don't see any harm in letting them come with us on our little training trip. Not like we're giving out village secrets or anything. I'll let the Sandaime know our situation with our next correspondence in a few days. Kakashi just nodded at that, and the girls grew irritated that they were now going to have an older girl who obviously had a crush on their blonde accompany them. This was going to be an interesting 2 weeks.